Hi, this is Privateer Station, and today we're bringing you day 350 of Putin's invasion into Ukraine. As always, with former advisor to the office of the President of Ukraine, Lieutenant Colonel Olexiy Arestovich, and Russian opposition politician Mark Feygin. Enjoy. Dear friends, glad to see you all on Feygin Live. It is 8th of February. Time is 9 p.m. in Kiev and 10 p.m. in Moscow. We're doing another stream with Olexiy Arestovich. Glad to see Olexiy, day 350 already. And we'll be discussing some news that appeared between our last stream and today. And as always, I ask our viewers to subscribe to our channel, to Olexiy Arestovich's channel, and to Privateer Station if you are listening or watching that in English language. And do not forget to like and share. I'm sorry I'm traveling. A day later I'll be back in my studio, but today you'll have to suffer my unusual background. Alright, Alexei, let's start with the main thing, with lightning fast visit of President Zelensky to London, and I think it is a successful one. And they've been discussing the probability of supplies of Storm Shadow and some other munitions with extended range. Of course, there is a cloud of mystery around the visit and some aspects of it, but perhaps tell us more about what you think about it. What I'm happy about looking at this visit is that it seems that Ukraine and the West have finally agreed to or figured out a way to introduce news to the world media sphere. The same thing happened in Ramstein, if you remember last time. On the level of officials, on the level of media, on the level of hints in different special interviews, they start discussing that probability of supplying longer-range missiles. And they start to pop up here, there, somewhere else. And then at the end, it is crowned by a statement of an official leader of the level of president, like President Biden, or a collective decision made in the framework of European Union and NATO, or Ramstein. We called the previous one already an aerial or tank Ramstein, so this one is already going deeper towards the aerial support. President Zelensky afforded himself only once to leave the territory of Ukraine. Once it was to the United States, and this time it's Britain. So he has a very thick schedule. He needs to meet officials in Britain, and then he also has a goal to see Macron and see the European Parliament and give a speech there. And it's interesting to observe how his visit is being represented in the main media. And it's nice to see him that he's being greeted by the king. He's actually the first Ukrainian president who met on the monarch level with the United Kingdom, and he brings a helmet of the Ukrainian pilot who was bravely fighting and shooting down Putin's jets over Ukraine. And official people in Britain come out and say, well, nobody's talking about us giving you planes yet. It's a little early, but... And then Minister of Defense comes out and says, well, yeah, but Ukrainian pilots will come and start training in our schools. And when he's asked about tanks, he's saying, oh yeah, the first tanks of Britain production, Challengers, will be in March. They'll be in Ukraine in March. And if you follow a serious rhetoric, what were they talking about tanks before? Those who don't remember, I can refresh you. They were talking that tanks will probably be there by summer, by the end of 23. So there is a cascade information processing is being played. It creates a certain mood and creates a certain logic of message or narrative on the professional language, which doesn't allow internal or external opponents to react adequately. So look, Olexiy, is it also to anesthetize the situation? Is it to make sure it's not too painful for Moscow to add some anesthesia or lubricant, however you look at it? Including that as well, Mark, yes. For example, Mark, you are belonging to an expert group that is reacting to news in Ukraine. Which message would you react in your speech, in your interview? If, for example, today there were 7 of those, and the President of the European Union announced that we might discuss in the near future the capability to provide jet fighters to Ukraine. Now, imagine that there are different people talking about that similar event, and they're coming from different angles, and at the end, all these little streams join together in one roaring river that is very difficult to stop or question. It's very difficult to open counter-propaganda to that. And if, for example, if you hear 8 messages about the jets during the day, but they all have different modality, because they're coming up with, we don't know if we'll give, maybe we will, maybe this month, maybe a few months later, maybe next year. And what about tanks? Oh, tanks are already on the way. So it's making it foggier for the counter-propaganda to react to that approach. And of course, when people are talking about supporting Ukraine with jets, it means that there's always resistance. They're discussing that on the backstage. At the same time, of course, our pilots are getting training. And remember, you and me talked before when people were confused about will there be tanks and not. We discussed it early on and said, of course, tanks will happen. It's just a matter of a little bit more of time. And you know what else is very interesting for me in this truly airplane day? First of all, it's the last seal that is broken. The holy grail, I guess, was aviation. Aviation and long-range missiles were the last holdouts. I guess nukes, what else is left, right? Hague Tribunal, Hague Criminal Prosecution announced Putin to be responsible for downing of the MH17 flight of that Boeing a few years ago. And I think the West finally made a strategy, made its mind that how they're going to deal with Putin at the end of the war. They're calling him criminal. They cannot take him now. Of course, he's got immunity as the leader of the country. But if he resigns, he definitely will be asked to visit Hague. And that could not have happened a couple years ago. This year, today, they are doing that. They are calling him a criminal. I think there were some negotiations on the backside with Putin and his regime, and if he really played a stubborn one and refused to negotiate, then the West probably withdrew any stops they had about that, and also they withdrew any stops about Crimea. And everybody understands that in the scenario planning, the attack on Crimea is a crown of Putin's career. It's probably easier for him to lose one of the borderline regions like Bryansk or something else. So when Ukrainian troops will get to the border of Crimea and will start working on it, he'll have only 2 options, either to rise stakes, use nukes, or it'll be the end of his regime. and the end of Crimea will be the end of Putin and his regime. And if we are talking about taking Crimea, and our allies are talking that they don't object to that, that means that they're ready to counter his possible attempt of using of nuclear tactical nukes on the field. And I think that decision was made. I know how politics works. If we're talking about attacking the Crimea Peninsula, if our allies made a decision that they will not object to that, it means they already made their mind about how to react to Putin's possible use of tactical nukes on the field. And there will not be any total global war, nuclear war out of that. Russia can probably withdraw from all the treaties and may even do the demonstrational strike on something like Zmeiny, Snake Island, but I am sure in 101% that Russia will not attack the mainland or Ukrainian army with nukes, because otherwise they would not be talking, our allies would not be talking about Crimea. They've been avoiding that topic extensively, not anymore. And also to call Putin personally responsible and the criminal proceedings in Hague, this is the pathway to the end of his career. All the stakes are made. Oh, yeah, you cannot play that back. Right, we changed our mind. He probably wasn't sure. We were not sure if he was part of that. No, that's not how it's played. And publication of that Hague material and conclusion, that was not a random sign. That when President Zelensky is talking to the parliament and visiting Europe, this is part of the bigger picture of a decision that Europe made to win this war and to make Putin personally responsible for bowing and for starting of that war. And this is not even a red line. I don't know what color that line is. This is made decision which is being implemented. So he's basically pointed to as, hey, here's a criminal. And in order for you to go to prison, you need to be named in that criminal proceeding. And that also is a reinforcement to Ukraine, so you understand right now what will happen with all your offensive campaigns and everything else you do there. That's the perspective for you. That speed, that rapid unfolding of what we're seeing today is that the news, basically, it indicates that a decision was made and our allies are following now the roadmap that they made their mind upon. And, you know, people are talking about separate negotiations and so on. I can say firmly that Britain and Britain and United States are not going to conduct these negotiations, not with Putin. Perhaps with somebody who replaces him, but not with the current leader of Russia. And I think that West finally realized that Putin is non-negotiable. He is just not living in the same reality, and he is refusing to cooperate. They were trying to explain to him, in my opinion, behind the scenes that, no, you should not be doing that. No, you're not doing that. You should. There are serious consequences and repercussions to this strategy. But he apparently refused to cooperate. He decided that he is strong enough and he doesn't care. Well, the West made their mind. And the moment they made their mind is when they stopped talking about their resistance to us attacking Crimea, where they actually said, yeah, sure, that will happen. And the day when they also pointed a finger at him saying that MH17, that all leads to Putin, which it does. And also they started talking about jets and other munitions. Even if in the process of his current campaign they move 20, 30 miles on the front, perhaps, but first of all they need to even do that. But we will grind the 300,000 here. They'll all be dead. And I do not believe he will have a chance to recruit 300 more thousand. I do not believe that, plainly. They do not have equipment, they do not have resources to do that. Also, that will likely happen closer to June, when they will be running out of the budget deficit, which will be ravaging Russian internal economy and regional politics, because big chunks of Russia are supported monetarily from Moscow, and that will definitely blow back at him. So June, July is when they'll start feeling that cringe. The West understands that, and that is probably the framework of where we will have a counteroffensive window with very likely bright results. And this narrowing corridor is what the West is guiding Kremlin regime through. So April will be the end of their failed offensive. Then there'll be a couple of Ukrainian counteroffensive, one or two, in the most painful spots. They get to the border with Crimea. They start using long-range artillery and missiles on the warehouses and military bases. People of Crimea start to, or whoever support Russia, start to flee, and it turns into chaos. And Putin needs to make a decision what to do. And if he considers a tactical nuclear strike, he is missing a few things. He is missing enough energy in his elites, and he is missing enough economic resources. The country is weak, getting weaker, and the main thing he's missing is army that he'll need to throw into the border, into the breach that he can break with through the Ukrainian army with nukes. You cannot just shoot and use nukes on the front, because the main purpose of that is to make a breach in the enemy troops, and then you only win the war by getting the balls of your infantry over the designated spot that you want to capture. And if you don't have infantry, there is nothing to capture. There is no goal of that. Nuclear, even tactical nukes, 3 shots do not solve anything. You need 50 to use that to achieve anything. Who will let him use 50 nukes on the front? Maybe the West, you can scare a little bit that he will be using that, but he also has India and China, who already on the level of Minister of Defenses came out and said, no, you are not using nukes in this war. And Putin's regime is centered currently on trading with India and China. They do not have anyone else notable worth speaking of. So this is the narrowing corridor, and this is a very short historic perspective. It's literally a several months window. He is a very stubborn character that is refusing to negotiate, and at the same side, it makes him very easy to manage, because he is not really wiggling around. He's easy to lead in that narrowing corridor. And we're just waiting for the moment in his environment when somebody comes up and says, there is no military solution to the current problem, and we need to negotiate. And who's against negotiations? Oh, that guy, that balding 70-year-old. Well, and we're not even sure if that's him or his double sitting in front of us. Well, that's the point. Let's give him up and continue negotiations. That's an interesting scenario, Olexiy. Thank you. We'll talk about a few more things that happened day 350, but I want us to get back once again to a noisy reaction about the Korean scenario. Even you commented a few things on it, and there were propagandists and others talking about that. I personally think that they tore this discussion out of context, but the discussion itself, with the reference to Rand Corporation materials, that was not even a full article, that was just a research paper. And going back to the core of that, throwing in the ideas of Korea, of 57 parallel, that's of course a Moscow narrative, right? The West does have some people who favor Putin and favor his position, and the West is different. Some people are corrupt, some people are useful idiots, some people are sincerely thinking that why not? We cannot avoid having Russia on the border, so we'll need to find a way. That used to be the system before, right? They were giving some concessions to Russia. The problem is that Russia is like a Russia is like an animal that is being fed spinach instead of real meat, and it's still refusing. It wants meat. But what I want to bring up is that the position of the West needs to form, though. Mark, he was today acknowledged to be responsible for downing of that Boeing in Hague. How more do you need? Well, I wanted to bring that thing. What are the chances of that group that is peddling this hysteria? And it's, if you notice, there's real hysteria, and Nebenzia, Russian rep in United Nations, is basically screaming that it is a proxy war that the West is waging against Russia, and damn Americans do not let us be peaceful. Russia, Mark, Russia is playing, and Putin's leadership is playing very silly role. They're playing the role of somebody suggesting to the world, let's play the future without America. And America is doing exactly opposite, saying, well, let's play the future without Russia. And put it on the weights and see which is easier to live without. So they can put that into Solovyov's and other propaganda statements in Russia. And then somebody in the West or in Ukraine would jump in and say, oh, Solovyov is talking about our interviews, and I already had enough of those attacks. I know how to counter that. I'm looking at these people who bring it up and saying, oh, you're watching Russian propaganda? Why are you watching Russian propaganda? You do not sleep without that? You want to get better acquainted with him? Why are you drinking from that nasty pool? Second, I do not consider my viewers or my nation to be weak. And I do not believe that discussing the scenarios and that stream with Yuri Romanenko and Alpha and Omega, there was a question posed there. There was an article by Rand Corporation, which is the crown of certain thought in the West, of certain line of thinking in the West. And there was a probability. It was posed as, what if that was a scenario? And we should have processed, and that's what we did. We processed different scenarios and played them out. Or should we be weak? Should we not even consider things like that? Should we be weak and feeble, and at the voice of some scenario that we do not like, we should roll in the ball and cry? We're strong enough, we can discuss any probability, and we even showed our viewers that even if such an eventuality exists, we showed our viewers that Moscow wins nothing in the end. And this is a standard polemics, right? It's thesis, antithesis. And I basically showed that even in this scenario, we still win a civilizational race, and Putin and his regime fail at the end. So why scream? I'm not asking you, it's a rhetorical question to the opponents. Why scream about that? Why be so upset? Oh, yeah. I know, Olexiy. They very often take that as certain narrative, as they taken it literally. Your ability to play out scenarios, they just take it literally. Well, yeah, Mark, they need to watch the whole stream to understand what are we doing there, because if they just turn on for 5 minutes, listen to something, grab that and run with it, it's stupid. And if they want to really understand what was going on, they need to watch the whole stream. Well, they don't want to, Olexiy. I don't care, Mark. If they do not want to watch the whole stream and to listen to the whole sentence, I do not want to limit myself to what I discuss. If somebody listens to Solovyov, listens to Russian propaganda, and then cuts snippets out of our discussion to their liking to attack us and Ukraine in general, I don't care about these people. And once again, for those who think, I would remind that in conditions of war, the proper planning always stems from the worst scenario. It is not going from, we are the best and our weapons are stronger. No, in the military exercise, if it's proper, you plan from the background that everything is not working on our side, we are weak and the enemy is strong. And then maybe what you plan on the table has a chance to bring you to victory. And again, my position in the media is dedicated to fighting Russian narratives. And I did show on that example, even on the pretty extreme one, that we are in a strong position, that we will win. And those people who understand, who have enough intellect to read, listen, and compare, I'm sure they're a great audience. The others who scream and cry, the sky is fallen, I don't think they're our audience, Mark. I will add here for myself, Olexiy, when does the evil become weaker? When people talk about it. Oh, yeah, exactly, Mark. The demon who is named becomes 50% weaker. Exactly. And I want to remind that that whole scream in Ukraine after our stream happened in a scenario when we discussed that possible situation discussed in Rand, and they ran around saying, "Oh, the West predicts that this is going to be a two-Korea scenario." No, the West doesn't predict that. The West analyzed what if, and we also played this out and showed what will happen if that eventuality somehow brings to life. We even then showed that we are winning. Even in that difficult scenario, we have a good chance to win. We are winning over our foe. So why scream? And also, why even scream about that if that scenario is a fringe scenario? This will not be realized. But trust me, when Putin is being named as guilty party in downing of that civilian Boeing, the West has made their mind. And when they also do not object to Ukraine taking Crimea back, the West definitely made their mind. All right, we are going to the next batch of news that came up because many experts are. Next one is that Russian offensive. Many experts are talking that what is happening on the front now is, in essence, actually a Russian operation. All this swaying on the front line and attempts to attack and changes there. This is part of Gerasimov's operation, offensive operation. You can take that differently, and maybe they're not doing those rapid offensives like some media screams that in 10 days there'll be a stronger motion. But it is definitely more and more experts make their mind that this is definitely that offensive campaign. You know, Mark, everybody has a preset mind. This is sort of a trauma in the ex-USSR mindset, in the European mindset, that at 4 in the morning on the 22nd of June 1941, it was a sudden offensive by all means, artillery, jets, infantry. People still have trauma of that event, of that historic event, and they're still bringing that model into today. Thing is, on the 11th month of war, it is impossible to prepare for such an event and do it suddenly. We are watching, we are seeing, they know, our enemy know that we are watching them. So what is happening? They're trying to capture tactical positions from which they can possibly continue their offensive later. Their attempts to capture Bakhmut is part of enhancing their further offensive positions. Solidar area is the same story. Then they're getting a bigger group on the second line, and they're creating a better supply routes, supply logistics for that possible offensive. Then there is some additional psyops and maneuvers that they're throwing into media, that they'll cross Kherson or they'll do something else. Somebody from the Western media recently asked me a question. You guys will lose Kherson again, right? I almost fell off my chair. I was asking, what do you mean? Well, we see in Russia, they are writing that they'll take Kherson back. I could only imagine Russian troops on the inflatables with oars crossing Kherson from the lower bank to the higher bank under the fire of our military. I looked at my opponent. He looked pretty serious, but the way he was thinking was definitely funny. And that's what they do with PSYOPs. They stir some stuff in the media to cause panic in society, so the leadership would throw additional resources in those areas and basically take them away from the Eastern Front, from the direction of the main strike. So, just looking at what's happening, their aviation did hit our positions. The diversion groups are being active in the north. So, why is that happening? Of course, how do you think? Well, you just elaborate, Olexiy. I'm listening. They'll be probably throwing that about the possible attack on Kiev. And, Kievans and others will start screaming, oh my God, there is another offensive being thrown at us. My counter to that, hey, look at the Western embassies. Anybody evacuating? No. So that's your answer. They will be provocations along the border. They will be sending some mechanized troops at a high speed to cross the border. Then they'll stop and turn around, or maybe even cross it for a mile, get into a skirmish, and then withdraw. They're only doing that to weaken our position on the east. So this is complete nonsense. You can fold that many times and flush it down you know where. Don't listen to Russian psyops. Come here. We'll try to dispel all that and explain you what is happening and shed the light on the situation. And 21 attacks during the day. Why today our aviation hit Russian positions 21 times? How many did we hit yesterday? 9. So we do understand. That tells you we do understand what's going on. We intensifying our counter actions to their offensive, and we attack their logistics and important places and groups that can stop them. Remember Sun Tzu, who was saying that the main goal is not to take enemies' fortresses. That's the silliest tactics. The main thing is to dispel their ideation, to make sure they don't even think about something. And that's what we're doing. We're basically precluding them from even considering the operation on certain parts by destroying their logistics. What do Russians do? They choose the weakest strategy and they attack our fortified regions. And they also use missiles on our cities, on our civilian targets, on Slavyansk, for example, Durechna in Kharkov region, 2 people dead, male 48, woman 45 years old. Volchanska, 2 houses destroyed, Chubuyev region, 5 houses shelled, Chernigov region was shelled, Donetsk region is under constant barrage of their missiles as well. So, one thing is that, they're trying to attack or trace our possible supply lines. And they're attacking rail stations, roads. And that's a definite sign of them preparing for offensive. It's their way of doing what we are doing. We're destroying their targets in the back. But you can see that, they are intensifying these attacks while they're still trying to storm our fortified parts of the front. They're still making the strikes, hoping to catch our logistics in the back. But again, it will be localized. All this great major offensive that was talked about, it will be localized from Kupiansk to about Ugledar. This is the side they'll be active on. And I predict that it likely will be Svatov Liman area, which will be one of the main hottest area in this fight. And Vugledar is another hot area where we actually are in counteroffensive right now and kicking them back to the original position. So for now, we do not see the third group which they could use for the defensive. For now, we see 2 groups near Liman and half of it in Vugledar, and that's all they have aggregated. And I have big concerns about their capability to create a third strike group in that main direction, and I'm very skeptical about that. And when some people talk about the fourth, I start to giggle. And if you listen to Russian propaganda, they're already saying that they'll take everything in the north, northeast, the whole eastern front. and they'll do some north attacks on Kiev. This is all fake. We'll tell you where they are going. It's literally the Eastern Front. That there is nothing else that they are capable of increasing their activity on. And that's where, on the east, that's where you can see the fight intensifying. You can see the artillery, you can see their aerial attacks, you can see missiles. So with all the provocations on the north, possible some in the south, there is nothing to be afraid of. Unless you literally live in the area where they're doing the provocation, right? So you can die if the mortar shell blows next to you, but it is not a major offensive. It's literally random shelling. So you just have to be careful. This is unfortunately war times we're living in. So that's the logic. All right, I ask upon our viewers to continue sharing links to that stream in social media. Click the like button. How many people are watching, Mark? Sorry, Alexei, I'm watching it from my cell, so it's hard to tell. I think it's 223,700 and 65,000 click the like button. And it's actually stronger than last stream. And last stream was watched by 1.5 millions already, so people are catching up and they are listening and watching, even if they missed the live cast. Today we're also 1 hour earlier. It's a bit unusual timing for us, and some of our audience may not be used to that time frame. Oh yeah, they probably didn't expect. That's right. People need to understand that they need to subscribe to hear our announcements. Do you have another news you want to bring up? Oh, one last appeal, please do not forget to subscribe. We need to vary our time when we go live, and subscribing does bring you closer to not missing us. And somebody will see a note from my channel, somebody will see a note from Olexiy's channel. It doesn't matter where you watch it. Or if you are watching and listening that in English, you'll watch that on the privateer station if you subscribe. All right. Another news, problem of our stolen kids that were taken to Russia. Official sources name over 13 up to 15,000. Those are the ones whom we know where they are and who they are. In general, there is a ballpark number of 150,000 kids transferred to Russia without acknowledgement of their parents or relatives. Our ombudsman, Dmitry Labonets, cut in halves his document of a participant of European Ombudsman organization, and he sent a cancellation letter for Ukrainian membership in this organization. Why? Because 2 Ukrainian kids who were refugees in Austria, some ombudsman from that organization, Joseph Ziegele, according to some media, good that's not Mengele, he is the general secretary of that organization. He is the member of the leadership, the top leadership of this org, and Austrian powers decided to investigate. So Austrian leadership is also, and Austrian people are going through a serious detox from the influence of Russian agents. Putin's people were in this country through and through. They've infiltrated different groups in there, different branches of the economy. Hungary and Austria, they both are taking very specific position about Russia, right? So that's what we're facing there. And Austria, that's a ridiculous event that came from there. So our position in the back is, as a response to that, we're withdrawing from that organization. When they take 2 kids from European country and basically steal them and transport to the territory of Russia, this is a huge scandal. I am using my position and my pulpit here to fan the flames of that. This is ridiculous. It should not be tolerated. We are losing our kids by tens of thousands. One thing is when it's occupied territory, we cannot control that. We can only work on that later. But this should not be. And I do want to attract more attention to the problem of Ukrainian kids, and that If European authorities will help us to investigate and prosecute that, I hope it'll be another good step in the right direction. And one more news in the line of fighting. News regarding fighting for our kids. It's a lengthy process that we need to keep working with, and we will continue bringing them back even after this war for as long as we can, till the last one is out. And another news, Russian kids, Russian teens, up to 40% said they want to immigrate and leave Putin's Russia. Imagine 4 out of 10. Probably more want to. It's just 4 that are brave enough to speak up. They're saying they do not see the future in this country. Who is 70 plus years old and running the show. They recently unilaterally changed the laws just by decree and let his friends to rule longer, because some of them already crossing that 70-year-old threshold as well. So the young generation is asking questions about can they live with that, and they come to conclusions, no, they cannot. This war is not their war. That future that war brings, they do not want to be part of that future. And that gives a huge hope to Russia and to people looking at Russia from the outside, for example me, that you cannot paint everybody with the same paint. Young people in Russia have a very different attitude to this war, and the hope is to change generations, and we need to work on that later, but and to figure things out, how to find the proper position for Russia and the right position in the future. But that war of that geriatry against the world, who are 70 plus years old, this is ridiculous. This is not finding any appeal within the Russian youth. In 1965, Mark, how old you'll be? You'll be 70? I'll be about 80, so yeah, we can probably imagine you ruling anything at that age. That's the time when this population will be strong, when these kids will be grown up. And we need to address that today. For me, this war is including the war for the future of Russia, so that the geriatric club that is feeding on the blood of youth, I'm quoting Jonathan Swift here. Remember, there was a flying island about the kingdom where people could live forever, but they needed to drink some youth blood in order to do so. Yeah, that's from that same book, the story I remembered. Okay. Dumas was referring that story, and other classics referred to that later. That's what they are. They need a lot of people's blood to feel themselves young. That's what Putin's regime right now, and Russia is under control of these horrible monsters who are getting feebler, but they want to live forever, and they're feeding off the blood of people. And the young Russia should be saved from that future, from people like that ruling them. Those people who want to be part of Europe, who want to be part of normal countries. That war is also for their future. So that's the angle. On one hand, yeah, you hear news from Russia that they're extending the time for management for the top leadership, so they can still work after 70. And on the other hand, you get a blowback from youth saying, no, we don't want to live here. And you need to understand, for youth, they don't know anything. That's all they know. That's their country where they grew up. It's their future, it's their language, their culture, and they are ready to reject that. So imagine. And yeah, there was a joke. Russian people, most of all, want to destroy Americans and a green card. Exactly, and live in America, right? So this is an anecdote, but it's got some roots. And there'll be a continuation. There'll be a continuation to this line of fight for the future of youth versus the geriatric club fighting for their survival and sending that youth to die. Right now, the process in Russia is still somewhere at the stage where most people are still shrugging their shoulders and saying, well, I cannot not go because, other people are going, I should not be hiding. And yeah, I kind of should go with them. And yeah, those are going together, coming back together in body bags if they're lucky. But yeah, it'll take some time to change that mind. We're getting there, though. Another thing I wanted to bring up, the story with Mikhail Saakashvili is growing, and the President Zurabishvili, current president of Georgia, made an announcement, and it was published and published far and wide, that she needs to resolve the problem of Saakashvili, but it is opposition and the ruling party who are responsible for that. So she is saving her butt, basically, and she is not referring to the refusal of the court. The court in Tbilisi basically said, no, we're not letting him out, and his attorneys are saying we'll appeal to that. But Zurabishvili actually came out and said, well, it's inner fighting between parties. It's still a sign that the process is going, that somebody did call her and tell her, Salome, you need to come out and start talking about that. And she's basically taking position, well, I'm not part of that. I shouldn't be part of that. And that's what she's officially saying. And she's basically pointing finger at two political forces in the country, saying, well, it's due to their bickering that this is happening. I have nothing to do with it. So please, on the 20th of February, come out. It will be a big action of protest around different countries of the world. Of course, please Europe, because that's where Georgia wants to get. Please come to the parliaments, to the places where your leadership works. If you're living in places like San Francisco, you can, of course, come to Georgian embassy, if you don't have your leadership in the city. But still, please come out and please help us close that matter, put it to rest, and let Mikhail Saakashvili out of the torture. Because if Georgia wants to have any future with Europe, they need to make proper decisions. Once again, I think people in Georgia are watching us, and I'm sure they will tell to President Zurabishvili that she still needs to understand that she is responsible. It doesn't matter that there are other criminal proceedings about Mikhail, that is still to be investigated. First of all, the first accusation about which his first 6-year-old term was based on, which was completely fabricated. It needs to be addressed, and he needs to be transferred to a place where he can be provided proper treatment. We do have information from Europe. I have information from my resources there that Saakashvili's situation did get on the radar, and they are concerned with him. And I'm calling upon Tbilisi once again to make their mind, to listen to that nervous hum that's coming from Europe in regards to situation with Mikhail Saakashvili, given that President Zelensky is also there talking about different topics. So, Mark, we can conclude that the ice is starting to crack, and the President Zurabishvili cannot leave that scene and say, I'm not responsible. Oh yeah, she definitely is responsible party. So yeah, she's not running. And what we are doing is called public diplomacy. This is actually a very powerful tool, because public diplomacy changes public opinion and works with media channels, and it forms political decisions from that angle. So the ice is cracking. Dear viewers, what we are doing here, that complex approach, does work. And from the European leaders coming out and posing questions to us, talking about that, we need to continue. And frankly, even if it didn't work, it would be a matter of honor to continue making an effort, because it's also a matter of your own conscience. We need to push that case to a conclusion where Mikhail gets a chance to live. So we'll talk about that a few more times before the 20th of February, but we do appeal to our viewers to find it within themselves to join these preparatory actions and coordinate within themselves. In some places, you'll come out to parliaments, probably need a better organization and some slogans and all. But in other places, yeah, still come out, even if whatever is going on. Find your friends, find people who want to come out. And as for our streams, I know we'll have one stream on Saturday, right? But I'm looking at the events unfolding. It's becoming so intense that we probably will be targeting every other day for our streams because once a week may retire a few things a little too early before we address them, which need to be addressed. So we'll be flexible. We're getting to the zone of war turbulence, right, Mark? There may be some time when we'll need to do this streams daily. Yep, very, very probable, Alexei. Thank you, viewers, and we'll see you most likely on Saturday, but please watch our announcements. And we thank Olexiy Arestovich. Please share links to that stream in your social media. And please subscribe to Feygin Live, to Olexiy Arestovich, and to the Privateer Station if you have not done that yet. Thank you so much. And yeah, thanks for staying with us. Alexei, all the best, and thank you. Good luck, everybody. See you, Mark.